Hey, what's up? What's up, everybody? You tuned in to another episode of Strategic Moves. I'm your host, Kenn Dowell. This is a place where we bring art, culture, politics, and business all together. And we do it every Sunday right here on this channel. But when I'm not shooting this podcast, I am the owner of Strategic Resources, where we specialize in political campaigns, government, and public relations. Been doing it in this city and this state for over 25 years. Met some interesting people along the way, and we want to make your next move a strategic move. So this program gives me an opportunity to bring those people on. We talk about some of the things that's interesting that's going on, and hopefully it's something that you will get out of this that can help you in your business or personal life. But if that sounds like something you want to do, I need you to hit the like button, hit the notification bell as well, so that you will know the next time this program is coming out. So we're going to get right to it today. Before I get going, I want to give a shout out to the best podcast producer in Cleveland, DJ True. What's happening in there?
What's going on?
Everything, man. Just getting ready to get going. It is cold as heck outside. I would say hell, but hell is not cold. It is freezing outside,
You know how
man.
people say it's cold as hell? How did that term start?
I have no idea. That is crazy, ain't it?
People
It definitely had to come from somebody who obviously has never been there, because if they were, they wouldn't say that.
You'd be
right?
like, have you been there?
Yeah, it's cold as
I don't
hell
think it's
outside.
cold down there.
I heard it's been as hot as the devil's toenails. I say that one. Now, that's when it's really hot outside, but I never say when it's hot outside, man, it's hot as cold. It's really cold. I don't know why people say that, but they do that. So what's going on with you? Everything's good? MLK weekend?
Yeah, MLK weekend. I was up in Akron, went to a gospel concert that was really good. Erica Campbell and Smokey Norfolk.
Oh, that's right. You was telling me about that. So that went pretty good, huh?
Yeah, Smokey had them crying and praising the Lord out there, boy.
I knew he was. Remember, I told you when you told me it was Smokey, I was like, oh, man, I would like to go see Smokey. I know he's pretty good.
And he looks really good. Like, I didn't ask him his age or he didn't tell his age, but he looks really young to have grown kids. Still traveling the world. He got his own church.
Okay.
He's doing his thing. People, I think he won his first Grammy in like early 2000s or whatever. He's still going on strong.
Yeah, I got turned on to him a long time ago. I think I had maybe his first, matter of fact, it was CDs. That's when we were still buying CDs. So I remember I bought his first CD and kind of was a fan to him ever since. It's cool. I wish I would have made it to that. It sounded like a good concert.
Yeah, it definitely was. It definitely was.
All right, we're going to jump right into it. Today, I got my guest who came into our studios today. Is somebody I known for quite a while. I think when we first got going, had to be my daughters wasn't even born. So I always can figure out about how long I know somebody about that. Kennedy is 23 years old. So if you were around before Kennedy was born, then that means that you probably 25 plus in our life. And so with that being the case, I wanted to bring you on to talk to her. We did her campaign. She was one of the very first campaign, her and her husband. Her husband is a really good friend of ours. We say as a group of us back then, we had an organization called Blacks United in Local Democracy, BUILD. We thought we was going to take on every elected official in Cuyahoga County and make a difference and try to do something ourselves. And we did that for quite a while until the group disbanded. But her husband, Larry Floyd, has been a really good friend of ours. And we had lots of parties out at their house and just their being involved with us. And his wife, who is here today, is a judge. She's been on the bench for quite a while now. She's serving, this is your what, sixth?
No, actually, it's my fourth term.
This is your fourth term. She's serving her fourth term and about to go into a fifth. It's about to go into a fifth term as a county juvenile court judge. And this is important to us because we have a lot of issues with our juveniles here in Cuyahoga County. And she's been there a while, and we've been helping her on our campaign for years. And right now, she is the only African-American judge we have in Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. And that's important to us, y'all, because that's the only representation we have with most of the kids that come through there are African-American. So that's very important that we make sure that Judge Floyd stays on the bench. So we're going to talk with her a little bit about that. She has a little challenger this year. We're going to talk a little bit about him as well. And we're going to talk about the court. We're going to talk about what's important and what we can do and what's going on down there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce none other than Judge Alison Nelson Floyd to our program. Let's give it up today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Judge, coming out today. We really appreciate you coming out to the program.
No, it's never too cold. I'm see you.
Oh, there it is. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate you coming out, spending the time with us, because it's important for a couple of things to me. One, it's important in the fact that, one, you've been a friend of ours, like we said, for years and been always there for us. So I want to support you in that. And two, that you're running again for office. And just in my little, everybody believes that I know everything that's going on in politics. Sometimes I don't, and sometimes I check out. And so I checked out for a little while to pursue this career in podcasting and everything else that I'm doing. But I ran into Larry Floyd, and I'm talking to him, and he told me that you were up again, and you told me you were up again, and we got into that conversation. And then you told me who you was running up against, which we'll get to that towards the end of the program. And I thought about it, was like, man, you're the only African-American judge we have down there at this point. And you got to be the longest serving out of everybody there, should be at this point, right?
I think so. One of the original long-term known judges was Leotis Harris.
Right.
And I want to say Leotis served maybe about 18 years.
What I meant among your colleagues now, you got to be the
I am the senior judge.
Yeah, you got to be the senior judge amongst all your colleagues down there now. That's one of the big things I want to say. And again, you're the only African-American, which makes that a really big deal to us. So, Judge, tell me about this. We're going to start our program off because we always get in everybody a little business just so people get a chance to know you. Are you originally from Cleveland? If so, where did you grow up here?
I am not originally from Cleveland.
No.
I actually was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Really?
I always tell everybody, I said, I'm part of the civilian military. My father worked for U.S. Customs.
Really?
And Customs is basically imports and
Mhm.
exports.
Mhm.
So whenever my father was promoted, we found ourselves in a new port city.
Really?
So I lived on both sides of Washington, D.C., and Virginia and Maryland.
Okay.
And when my father was appointed as an assistant district director,
Mhm.
he moved to Miami, Florida.
Mm.
And when he continued in that capacity
Mm.
in Long Beach, California,
Mm.
I found myself in Huntington Beach, California, and that's where I graduated from high school. When my father was first named district director for U.S. Customs, it took us all the way to Virginia, now in Southern Virginia, in the Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads area. And he last served as a district director in Cleveland before his retirement. So brought him here.
So how old was you when you got to Cleveland? Like you was in college?
No, I was right after college.
Right after?
Yeah, I was about 24.
Oh, so right after college. And what college did you go to?
The first college that I went to actually was Norfolk State University. When I
Okay.
graduated in 1970,
Mhm.
and transitioned from
Mhm.
California to Virginia.
Okay.
And I really didn't know what college I was going to go to. My mother insisted that I not stay in California while she
Mhm.
lived 3 months.
So before we get to that, because of that, you had brothers and sisters, only child?
No, I had 2 younger brothers.
Okay. Now you the oldest.
I'm the oldest and
Okay.
the only.
And the only girl. Okay. So
Yes.
that's why you wasn't going to be too far.
No, I wasn't going.
Okay.
And I really didn't know what college I was going to attend
Mhm.
in Norfolk.
Mhm.
And I just remember, and I tell the children and the parents that come before me,
Mhm.
I'm like, well, your parents make a lot of decisions for you. I know that when I first got to Virginia Beach, all I wanted to do was work, and then I would think about college.
Mhm.
And every time I said, Daddy, I can work, then I can go to college, he would hand me another application for college. I said, no, really,
Mhm.
I can work,
Mhm.
and then I can go to college. And he would hand me another application.
Mhm.
I applied to a number of law schools. I got
Mhm.
into 2.
Mhm.
One was Case Western Reserve University.
Okay.
The other was Howard University,
Mhm.
because I wanted to get back to the people. But
Mm.
my father made me an offer that I could not refuse.
What was
which
that?
was he would provide me room and board if I was just willing to commute back and forth to school. So I selected Case Western Reserve.
What did you do after college? Did you go to a firm or did you go work in the prosecutor's office, public defender's office?
Actually, I started working for myself.
Really?
Yeah, the Thomas Shaughnessy's office.
Oh,
And because I didn't know really what direction I wanted to go.
okay.
And I had a conversation with one of my former professors, Professor Enton, my property
Mm-hmm.
professor, who suggested that if you don't know exactly what you want to do, maybe you ought to clerk for someone.
Okay.
And they're commonly referred to here as staff attorneys.
Okay.
But at that point in time, they were known as law clerks.
Okay.
And so I found out that the late Stephanie Tubbs Jones, as well as the late Carl Character, were looking for a law clerk.
Ah.
So I went and interviewed with them,
Mm-hmm.
and they selected me, and I was served as their law clerk for 2 years.
Oh, so you was a law clerk under. Did Stephanie work at that law firm too?
No, at the general division when she was right before she was prosecutor.
Uh-huh.
I was
Oh,
her last law clerk.
really? Oh. And then she went on to become
Prosecutor.
prosecutor first, then she
Yes.
became congresswoman. Oh.
And it was the kind of thing where the law clerk's position at that point in time was only for 2 years.
Okay.
And my 2 years were up.
Mm-hmm.
And although I had applied to firms in
Mhm.
other areas, didn't have any interest. And so I talked to Stephanie, and she said, I think that there are bigger things out there for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I think the connection was made to the domestic relations. And I was hired as a magistrate there, and that was the first time that I had served in a judicial capacity.
Uh-huh. How long
for
was
the
you
Common Pleas
in
Court.
domestics?
Almost 10 years.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
1991 till
Mhm.
the end of 2000, right
Mhm.
before I began my service at the Juvenile Court. So actually, the Juvenile Court is the third division of our Common Pleas Court that I have worked for.
Wow, how many divisions is there?
There's a total of 4.
Oh, so which one you haven't done?
Probate.
Probate. Oh,
Mhm.
okay. Now, what made you decide to run for judge? Because now I guess you're coming around, and what was the decision factor or the people that helped shape that idea for you to say, you know what, maybe I'm thinking about running for judge? And if
I
so,
was encouraged to run. And I would say, thank you. That's very nice. I'm glad you think about me in that way. But I think it was really under the mentorship of Christine McMonigal that she said, run for my seat. And even though I came in second in the primary.
Who was first in that one? That wasn't Sacco, was it?
No, it was
No, because
Kathleen
Sacco didn't win. I didn't think so.
he was third to me.
Okay.
I was second, and Kathleen
O'Malley was
won.
first.
Take the chance, and I go out and run. And yeah, I guess Larry and I had been married about a year at that point in time.
Really?
And as I sometimes teasingly say to fellow candidates who don't necessarily succeed the first time, I said, did you catch the bug? I said, will you do it again? Is this something that you really want to do? And when I heard from Peter Lawson Jones about the initiative of the Democratic Party to increase the number of African American men and women on the common pleas level,
Correct.
and the county level, and how they were interviewing potential candidates for 2 races, one in the Court of Appeals, that went to the late Jim Draper, and one for Juvenile. They had selected that race. And I did interview.
I just had a flashback. I remember all of that stuff. You just mentioned it. I remember the fight for Jim
that
Draper.
was the Y2K.
Yeah, that was right. There was a lot going on back then.
That was the thing that the computers would come back
Exactly.
after December 30th at about 11:59 in a few seconds.
I remember the party went through a whole lot to try to make sure African Americans could get on there. And a lot of it had to do with Jim Draper. I think Draper had just finished out a race for mayor, wasn't it, or something he ran for?
I'm not sure what Jim ran for.
I think it was.
I know that he was.
And he didn't
he
get
was
it.
the chief public defender.
Yes. Oh, it might have been prosecutor he might have ran for.
It's possible that he might have run for prosecutor.
I think it was prosecutor. He ran for something big. He didn't get it. And I remember they were African Americans and the push to get more African Americans in the positions and stuff. I remember that whole movement. Peter was a commissioner back then.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And they started to try to make that move. And so you applied for the juvenile seat.
I did.
Okay.
I just remember, 3 things. One, I walked into the room, I sat down, and I saw Pat Britt. because I had worked with her husband
Mm-hmm.
at a domestic relations court.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that I remember is I spoke first.
Mm.
And as the older sibling of two younger brothers, speaking first oftentimes sets the tone.
All right.
And I wore my best dress, even if it was a Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I wore my best dress. That's how we were raised. Dress for the part that you want.
Mhm.
If you're interviewing, dress like
Right.
you're getting ready to interview. I walked away with the recommendation to the party, who
Mhm.
then recommended me to the city and ward leaders, who then took that process for endorsement to the party as a whole, and
Mhm.
the rest is
History.
history.
You became a judge, and now you're working on your 5th term.
My 5th term.
Oh. So let's talk about that. Now it's 5 years going on your 5th term, and we're going to call it that you're going to win this 5th term again, because I believe in that, and you're doing a good job down there. But let's just talk about juvenile judge, and now you got the job itself, and years ago, and you think about going into that job when you first walked in there versus what you know now. What you think is the difference and the biggest thing you think you learned from that?
I think the first thing that I learned walking in there was something that Jimmy said to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I didn't see you at the meeting. And I said, wait a minute. I'm doing exactly what the voters told me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I am there at my job. I work 40 hours a week plus. This is a new job for me. I'm doing the work of the court. I'm meeting with the families. I'm making decisions about children. And he said, but you weren't at the meeting. And I said, but I'm doing my job.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, but it's more than just that. There's a part of your position that's a judge,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also a part of your position that you need to be at the table
Mm-hmm.
when the community meets,
Mm-hmm.
because you represent all of the people that voted for you.
Mm-hmm.
And how will we hear their voice if you don't come to the meeting and sit at the table?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's there that I realized really all of the things that a judge represents
Mm-hmm.
or has the possibility of representing to its community. I had been involved in civic organizations. I had been
Mm-hmm.
serving on the Phyllis Wheatley board, I think, at that point in time. So I had been civically involved,
Mm-hmm.
speaking, all of those kinds of things. And yes, I had been a judicial officer as a magistrate, and now then as a judge.
Mm-hmm.
But the scope of what your words, I don't necessarily want to call it influence,
Mm-hmm.
but how people want to hear from you, and what are the issues, as you say, affecting juveniles and families in Cuyahoga County.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bring that to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's at that point in time that I began to balance
Mm-hmm.
both the work of the court as well as the work and the needs of the community outside.
So let's talk about the community right now and what's going on in the community as it relates to the juveniles and everything that's happening right now with the uptake on crime that's happening in our communities. That a lot of it is driven by juveniles. We know that there's the Kia boys, if you would call it, uptake in all the stolen cars that are going on, and just the robberies and the gun violence. From your perspective in court, are you seeing a lot more of that, or what is some of the common denominators that's happening now that you see over your years of being in court, that things it has to be changing and it's a little worse? So what's the difference in all of it, you think? And what's that narrative that's changing these young people to where we're at today, you think?
There are certainly some things that are changing,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some things that are still the same.
Okay.
It kind of ebbs and it flows,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that there are high points and then there are low points depending on how the community responds.
Okay.
Back in 2008, I had one of the first major gang cases.
Mm-hmm.
13 kids, many of them being pressed to be transferred
Mm-hmm.
to the adult court, that they might be tried as adults.
Mm-hmm.
And by educating our probation staff, a number of our probation leaders, whether that was Skip whether that was Roscoe, whether that was Jill,
Mm-hmm.
to really get a sense of that first ongoing or oncoming wave of what was perceived as gang or clique violence.
Mm-hmm.
And as the court, the community, policing
Mm-hmm.
addressed that particular issue, it dropped.
Mm.
And then it flowed back up when it became more of heartless felons.
No, what was the difference? It's still a gang.
I think the difference was there was a slowing, as in all things human.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reorganization,
Mm-hmm.
depending on where it comes from. It's a lot of adult influence
Mm-hmm.
into the behavior of children.
Okay.
The robberies had increased, the burglaries had increased. As law enforcement was able to address those issues, the burglaries died down.
Mm-hmm.
The robberies are.
But when you say address those issues, and addressing those were arresting more, or being, or is it the arresting of more, or is it the when I get arrested, you get in front of the judges, what the judge do to them that's stopping? That's
the arresting.
Okay.
The prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
The disposition, the sentencing.
Have you think a lot of that changed over the years?
It changed over the years, I would say, in a couple ways.
Mm-hmm.
One is when we had that first recession,
mm-hmm.
and I think that was like 2008,
mm-hmm.
and resources were very tight,
mm-hmm.
particularly on the state level,
mm-hmm.
because it is the state of Ohio that manages the Department of Youth Services. And at that point in time, they probably had close to maybe 12, 13 facilities
mm-hmm.
for which we could send children for their commitments and their rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
When the recession hit, they had to close a number of facilities.
Mm.
And in doing so, you would think that was a real negative, closing facilities. But those are the facilities for which we're sending these young people,
mm-hmm.
and they're being rehabilitated.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, closing those facilities made us work harder,
mm-hmm.
and they made us work smarter
mm-hmm.
by addressing those youth within our counties and with our home base,
mm-hmm.
so that we did not have to rely
on just sending them away.
On just sending them away. And so as they closed facilities, we became better at addressing those local and those regional needs.
Mm-hmm.
The burglaries went down.
Mm-hmm.
Robberies, maybe about the same. But I did see a decrease, clearly, in the number of burglaries that were happening at one point.
So as of right now, a lot of that you think is changing now to get worse?
Again,
mm-hmm.
Which means it flows back.
Mm-hmm.
Flow means it kind of flows up and over.
But it gotta be, the record has to be showing that we have to have more juvenile crime now than ever before. It's just, you have to, just even based off of the number of just stolen cars elevates the amount of juvenile crime, right? And then with the gun violence that's going on, and
that has caused an uptick.
Mm-hmm.
But let me suggest a couple of more things other than just the fact upwards of juvenile crime.
Mm-hmm.
There are statistics that say crime overall has reduced.
Mm-hmm.
To some extent, the car thefts,
mm-hmm.
even that I'm seeing on my docket, have somewhat reduced.
Mm-hmm.
To some extent, they've been identified, or at least been charged,
mm-hmm.
to a smaller group of people.
Okay.
Not all juveniles,
mm-hmm.
not a great number of juveniles.
Okay.
But a smaller group of juveniles.
Okay.
We'll talk about gun violence in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a smaller group.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the efforts of state, federal, local law enforcement, prosecution,
mm-hmm.
identifying
mm-hmm.
who those groups are,
mm-hmm.
and as they say, getting them off the street.
Mm.
Now, the more troubling thing is to include in that group
mm-hmm.
the 11, 12, 13, and 14-year-olds.
Okay.
because they've been told by someone 18, 19,
Mhm.
20, 21,
Mhm.
you ain't gonna do anything. So they influence them to do the groundwork.
Mhm. So you see a lot of that.
Yeah, I would still say that other than those things that contribute to delinquency,
Mhm.
substance abuse,
Mhm.
mental health,
Mhm.
lack of structure,
Mhm.
dysfunction in the home,
Mhm.
lack of education. Schools provide a great deal of structure
Mhm.
and focus for children.
Mhm.
COVID wiped out almost 4 years of,
That's true.
so it took it down.
Mhm.
That eliminated that structure,
Mhm. Guess you got a point there.
you know,
And around that
bored, and
time,
then
yeah.
we're all sitting in the house and we're trying to think what we're gonna do
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how we can make a little money.
Mhm.
It did not help,
Right.
and I don't know enough
Mhm.
about the car maker for Kia.
Mhm.
I just know that when my Monte Carlo was stolen twice
Right.
and I went out to purchase a new car,
Mhm.
I was like, what is your reputation for it being stolen? Oh, it's
Mhm.
very high. Next car, what's your reputation for
Right.
being stolen? It's a little lower. I'll look at your car.
Mhm.
What's your rep?
Yeah, but everybody came to
No,
it,
but
right?
what I'm saying is
Mhm.
this. Unfortunately, they manufactured a car where people figured out.
But you know what? This is my thing on that. People, that's not new. People been
Hmm.
stealing cars for years. They were hot wiring them before you can take a screwdriver and peel the columns. They went through that. Remember, then everybody would start buying the club. And then they bought that thing you used to wrap around your thing.
I had a column lock. Don't you
Column
forget-
locks. We went through clubs, column locks. So people been stealing cars, catalytic converters, and things like that for years. To your point that you mentioned about the young kids, is it safe to say that the home structure of a lot of things from the time you came on versus now is tremendously different? Meaning that a lot of these kids, and they say this a lot, are out there hustling and doing things on their own because they lack all of those things that you named: structure, stability, education, and all of that, because of the lack of adult structure being the major one in that. What's your thoughts on that?
Or even if it's not adult structure, to be raised by a single parent who's the primary wage earner, and a change in the economic environment whereby it's very difficult to
Mhm.
secure a 40-hour-a-week job
Mhm.
from 9 to 5 and be home in time enough for the children
Mhm.
from that 5 until they're off to school and then you're off to work.
Mhm.
Are you talking about 2 part-time jobs? Are you talking about the best pay, for example, like an Amazon?
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
that the 6 to 1?
Mhm.
Is that the 11 to 6?
Mhm.
Who's watching them at home?
Mhm.
Understanding that you may have a number of children. The resources that you do get from your job, does it allow for you to get a babysitter, an
Mhm.
au pair, a
Mhm.
nanny?
Mhm.
Do you have parents that are well enough? Do you have siblings that can help you
Mhm.
with that? Because to afford a babysitter is the same challenge that many young parents have
Mhm.
in terms of affording daycare.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's really because it all comes from literally what? The same
Mhm.
resources in the same pot of money.
So how do you balance that as a judge to say, okay, I understand that, but this kid still went out there and he robbed, he pulled a gun, he did this and that. And I wrestle with this discussion I was having with somebody the other day. We were talking about the prosecutor, and
Mhm.
this discussion came up with, oh, we need to get rid of the prosecutor. And I'm like, why we got to get rid of the prosecutor, the way he's prosecuting crimes, and people are doing this and they're doing that. And the prosecutor should be more lenient in this way, and they should be more about this. And some of the things I started listening to what people are saying, I come into this point in my life that more law and order a little bit.
Come from a
Prosecutor.
law and order community.
And I want him doing what he's supposed to do. Now, I expect us to have a balance where you should have representation, and I'm hoping that the judges are more in a position to do that. But that's where I'm at, and that's where I think people, and that's why I guess my question to you is, it's hard as a judge balancing that because you have to make that decision and taking that into account. And I'm looking at you like, man, I'm broken because this kid just tore up my life and all of that. And on the other side, you got his parents who's giving you everything you just told me about why they can't. This kid is out of control, but they still love him and we want to give him a chance. That's difficult. To be. And you done had some major ones, and we ain't gonna get into them, but you done had some major cases that came up where people challenge your thought process on why you did it. Tell me, what's your process in dealing with that stuff, and how you make those decisions like that?
One of the words that you said
Mhm.
was so critically important
Mhm.
that I don't even know if you realized it
Mhm.
when you said it.
Okay.
A kid.
Mhm.
And what has been the challenges for this kid
Mhm.
to somehow do the right thing or the things that we expect or we need them to do. By the time they get to 3, we just really don't want them to put their finger in the socket or their hand on the stove.
Mhm.
And we tell them all the time, but we're born with choice.
Mhm.
And by the time we get them to kindergarten or to first grade, we're introducing them to society and the social expectations and what we're trying to teach them to do.
Mhm.
When there's dysfunction, when there's substance abuse, when there's mental health concern, when there's an absent parent, when there's incarceration, when it's a very young mother or father, may not be as mature in parenting as we would like them to be. That's what children see. That's what they model. That's how they respond. In so many ways, we are beginning to learn better because we've studied it longer since I've been on the bench.
Mhm.
The effects of trauma on children. When you have trauma, when you have dysfunction, when you have housing insecurity, when you're hungry, when you have ADHD, when you're not catching on in class,
Mhm.
when you're being bullied,
Mhm.
maybe if you're being sexually assaulted in your own home. How do you think straight and do the right thing? And then you have older people around you
Mhm.
that may be saying, take a sip, some alcohol,
You
smoke a
deal with
little.
that. The courts, you again, you taking all of that into account. The courts doesn't have any real programs. I don't know, and you could tell me I'm wrong if there's
We do have
programs
we
that
we
deal with it.
absolutely do have
Okay,
programs.
so your
Our juvenile court, one of, I think, the first programs that we have
Mhm.
for our parents is our intervention center,
Mhm.
where you can see trouble on the horizon
Mhm.
and actually bring your children, contact the court and its intervention center to see what community-based program services, providers, organizations can help you to avoid the trouble that you see coming.
So is it safe to say that if I'm in court, my son came in here and he's been having issues and having those, do you as a judge, all those things that you think is happening
Yes.
because dad ain't there, dad may be on drugs, all of this stuff. As a judge, do you ever say, you know what, as a parent, we're gonna hold you accountable for what he done. Not in the sentencing of what he did, but in the fact that you're just a terrible parent that's raising a kid in that position. And it could be that you're terrible because of your circumstances. I'm not gonna say that, but circumstances can still make you a bad parent. So you a bad parent because of your circumstances. Does the court look at that and say, well, you know what, we're gonna look at this holistically instead of, yeah, this guy, he robbed somebody.
We're going to look at it holistically,
Uh-huh.
but I'm so mad at adults, I don't know what to do.
Okay.
White, black, blue, purple, green, whatever.
Okay.
from Sandy Hook to Columbine to what happened in Florida to Colorado. I am so upset with my fellow adult Americans
Mhm.
about what guns really mean and are doing in this society. I understand about the Second Amendment. I
Yes, sir.
got it.
Mhm.
I got
Mhm.
it. I don't believe that the Second Amendment was designed to put military-style weapons in the hands of the non-military. I understand about the curtilage, the place around your home, and you're being able to defend your home. I totally get that. I totally get that. I understand the difference between urban and rural. I understand the difference between hunting and not.
Mhm.
I understand the difference between Americans who
Mhm.
regularly have guns in their home and have taught their children these are the rules with regard to the guns. If you have no experience in that, upset. Because I don't think that, what did they say? 3 times as many guns as there are Americans. Okay, you only got but one house.
Mhm.
Really?
Mhm.
Really?
So you saying it's too much access to weapons for young people?
It's too much access. Because you think you hit it. How many times as a child did you find something while the adults were cooking or washing or
Mhm.
getting something out of the car? How many times did you find something in the house that they thought that they hid from you?
Mhm.
That hasn't changed
Mhm.
about children. They can still find the things
Mhm.
that we think that we have hidden. I read in the news, I definitely had a case where, as adults, I don't think we're being as responsible for our constitutional right to carry a weapon
Mhm.
as we should.
Should be stronger laws.
Stronger laws might be helpful.
Mhm.
You don't have to be responsible for something you don't have.
Mhm.
But I definitely had a case where a woman literally went into a convenience store and she just had a gun on her hip and she just talking to the cashier and everything.
Morgan grabbed it out of it.
And somebody grabbed it as though it was a personal rifle.
I heard about that too. Yeah. That's when they first came out. Everybody, hey, I'm gonna walk around and showing everybody, and they walk right up on you and snatch your weapon as
That's
quick as
not
day.
being
That's
responsible
correct. That's
for
correct.
something that's very serious
Right.
and can cause harm.
That's
If
fine.
I had my druthers, because I see cases come through and I will ask the prosecutor, why is there not this specification as opposed to that specification? Usually you're looking for any child that comes across a weapon to, at the conclusion of the case, particularly if they're found to be delinquent, to forfeit that weapon. Just, you don't get it back.
Mhm.
I said, why is it not here? We have a legitimate gun owner. We found the owner.
Mm.
And I'm like, there's a part of me that says, did they report it stolen? Did they report it missing? Because if you didn't do any of those two things, I'm not sure you should get it back. Because
That's
guess
what I'm
what?
saying. I agree with. That's what I'm about to say. My question was, you should be able to do that, but you can't.
No, because they have a legitimate owner that they want to return it to.
Wow.
But again, another level of, we bring something very serious
Mm-hmm.
into our family settings,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't take it
Mhm.
seriously.
Mm-hmm.
2 cases. The one over Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
The brother who got mad that he didn't have the Christmas gift that he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Shot and killed his sister, for which his brother then grabbed another gun in the home and shot him.
Mm.
That sounded like 2 guns to me. How you got 2 guns at your grandmama's house? Does she allow guns in her home? What about?
But isn't that the individual again, right? We can't blame that on society. Those 2 dudes bought those guns.
I'm mad with my fellow Americans
Let's talk about this.
because they aren't being careful.
They're not being careful, and I agree with
They're
you.
not being careful.
I that's a small part of it, but these kids are breaking into cars, they're breaking into houses, they're doing the stuff that they're doing, that even if I am being careful in my house and you break in my house and you go through my house and you find my stuff, you shouldn't been in my house in the first place, right?
No doubt about
Or
it.
in my car in the first
No
place.
doubt about it. You
So
find your gun missing, please report it stolen so
now
that we
that
can start looking for it.
so they can start that I agree with, but I think the responsibility on these kids, they still are doing more mad, crazy stuff than they should to be doing it. Just like you say, the audacity to even run up on somebody and snatch a gun out of their waist or out of their thing.
A good part of
Yeah.
education and parenting education is
Mhm.
you gotta have some basic rules in your house.
That's correct. And if
And one of those rules is don't touch it.
I'm willing to bet you, if you probably look into it, those guns probably wasn't the homeowner's guns. Hell, as far as we know, both of those kids probably had their own guns.
But if it wasn't a homeowner's gun,
Mhm. They probably had their own guns.
what I'm saying is, what do you tell your kids about bringing guns in your home?
They ain't listening. They don't listen.
Rule number 2.
They don't
Rule
listen.
number 2.
They ain't listening.
Rule number 2, you gotta listen to me. But
They don't.
Ken,
They don't. That's why they in
Ken.
your courtroom, because they ain't listening.
every day a child is not listening.
Hold on.
I'm not saying
between
no.
a child and a delinquent, because I think there's a big difference. There's a big difference between a kid and a delinquent. And most of the people we're talking to when they first come into your court, they're kids.
Right.
But if they come in there the second and third time, I think they'd be called delinquents, right?
Delinquents and some criminogenic thinking.
Exactly. So that's all I'm talking about, the delinquents. Every kid makes a mistake. Every kid that end up in juvenile detention center doesn't belong. Hell, it's just by the grace of God, I probably just never got caught at any of the stuff I did as a juvenile. While I have never got a juvenile record. But
you and I
was
both.
never a delinquent. That's what I meant. Maybe I would if I got caught. I'm just saying, I think there's a difference. I think there's kids who, and I think that's what I'm talking about.
And that's why it's incumbent upon me.
How you balance that delinquent?
To know you don't balance, per se, the delinquent.
Mhm.
You address the behavior.
Okay.
And you exact the consequence. Is it a consequence that they can meet and follow in the community under supervision?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a consequence that they have to be separated from the community in a rehabilitative program, in a rehabilitative setting, in a residential partial hospitalization, or actually a secure facility like DYS? And so it is experience. It is dealing with a lot of kids. It is looking them in the eye. It's understanding what the strengths of their parents are.
And every once in a while, you take a chance to give a kid, I really think this kid deserved this opportunity.
Chances. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that. Because what I tell kids,
I can tell that's just the type of person you are. You hoping that everybody's going to.
The lessons of life is all of us have gotten second chances. I'll raise my hand right now. Correct. All of us has gotten second chances. Correct. What I explain to kids is it's them third, fourth, and fifth chances that are hard to come by.
That's correct. That's correct.
And how long do you wait for your third or fourth or fifth chance?
That's correct.
A week? A month? A year? I point out to all the adults in the room, I go like this. You can ask any adult in this room about themselves or a friend of theirs. They've waited 5 years. They've waited 10 years. Sometimes it's the third and fourth chances that don't come.
That's correct.
So if I pull you out of this hole that you're in, I got one hand that I'm holding on to you and another hand that I'm holding on to your parent. I have my hand holding on to your parent because I don't want to fall in on top of you. That's two people in a hole. So I'm holding, I said, I'm going to pull you out. I said, but if you fall back in that hole, I said, how many hands does Judge Floyd have left? Well, you're holding on my parent. You don't have any hands left. I said, see, that's second chances. Because see, I don't have any hands left. You'll have to wait for somebody else to come by that hole and pull you out. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes they may never come. So if you get out, you need to stay out. And I think that's a basic concept. That it's not that even some of us haven't experienced third or fourth chances. What we hope that we've learned in life is, whoo, haven't gotten past that one. Ooh, let's not do this. Let's not do this again.
Right.
And then we begin to choose. Because many things are about choices.
By choice. And that's what I always say. Let's move to this position in courts, because we're rounding out here, is bond overs. And people talk a lot. That's one of the big things now with kids being bound over into adult. What's the decision making in that and making that decision to say, you know what, this child should be looked at as an adult or charged as an adult?
I don't want to call it charged as an adult. What the statute provides for is if you're accused or have been alleged to have committed certain offenses, and particularly for those, what they refer to as Category 1 offenses, aggravated robbery, aggravated burglary, possibly rape. That includes a firearm that a child brandished, possessed, indicated that they possessed it or used it to facilitate the offense, and they are 16 years of age or older. The law requires that if we find probable cause, reasonable cause to believe that they committed the act alleged, and that the act alleged would be a felony offense if committed by an adult, we are required to send the case, transfer the case downtown, that they be tried as an adult. That's why you see most of the murder cases going, and the aggravated robberies with firearms specifications.
And aggravated robbery is like they pulled it and actually hurt you or something? Is that what?
They didn't have to hurt you.
Just pulled it on you, period. That's what's considered aggravated.
That's an aggravated circumstance.
Really? Okay. I always thought they had to do something, even if they just pull a gun and say, give me your money.
I see by your action that your hand is pointed directly in my face.
That's aggravated.
And that goes like this. Do I believe that gun is real? Do I want to not separate? No, I think I'll separate from my property. There you go. It's all right.
That's aggravated. Wow. And that literally can get you charged as an adult.
That can literally get you. Once a case is sent over to the adult division, it goes before the grand jury and you're charged as an adult.
So the grand jury kind of determines whether you're charged as an adult?
No.
You still gonna get charged.
It's the offense
that makes that happen. Okay.
That makes that happen.
Okay.
Whether or not you're tried as an adult is what happens at juvenile court.
Okay.
Because we have to conduct a hearing, a probable cause hearing, to determine whether or not there's reasonable cause to believe that you committed the act alleged. Now, this can go as low as 14 or 15. However, for the 14 and 15-year-olds, there's a second step. Are they amenable, rehabilitatable in the juvenile justice system?
For the 14s?
For the 14 and 15-year-olds.
16, it ain't that.
Nope. 16,
you gone.
Bye-bye. But for the 14 and 15-year-olds, are they amenable?
Was happening. It seemed like I guess maybe we're not, everybody think that would be, so having a weapon, let me go there then. Having a weapon, you got caught and you was one of these teens that just basically police pulled you over or whatever, and you was one of the 5 guys in the car with a gun. That's not an offense that they can charge you of. You just got a weapon that don't belong to you.
Yeah, and it may not even be an offense, even if a robbery occurred. If you weren't the one that was holding the weapon, you may not be transferred on that as a matter of law. Mandatory. The prosecutor may ask in his discretion for the court to apply their discretion to transfer you, that you might be tried as an adult anyway. And there's 6 factors that the court is to consider. Whether or not a child should be transferred and tried as an adult. Did it involve a gang? Was there injury? That there's no mental health disease or infirmity, those kinds of things. There's not really enough time for them to deal with the consequences of their actions. But there's also 6 factors that say that they shouldn't be, or you should consider not transferring them. They were under the undue influence of another.
Mm.
They did not believe that they would cause harm or injury by their actions, that they're mentally ill, disabled, or have an infirmity, that there is enough time to rehabilitate them in the juvenile system. Because if you are transferred, let's just say you're transferred at 16, you're found guilty at 17, and at 17 years and 3 months, they send you to adult prison. You're not in general population. You're actually in a isolated pod because you can't be part of the general population until you're 18 years of age. Would you like to know, do they have school in that pod?
Yeah, I imagine they do, right?
Not in the adult system.
No?
No.
So you just said...
do you think that they have counseling like they have at DYS or even our detention center in that pod? No.
And I imagine that pod, you by yourself, they probably just got you out.
No, they got you with other similarly situated kids. So what you all doing? Talking the same old criminogenic talk over the same criminogenic cards?
Waiting to go to jail.
Waiting to go to the general population.
Wow. So no chance of rehabilitation if you could.
What we have to offer.
That's state.
Whether it's DYS, whether it's here in our community, even from the perspective of our detention center and the services that we offer there, is an ability to change. And if you really believe in second chances, and a kid doesn't know the difference, even with that criminogenic thinking or that criminogenic influence, they want to change, then transfer is not always appropriate because they can be rehabilitated or have a chance to be.
What you think makes a good juvenile court judge? In your years of doing all of this, if you were to say, you know what, I'm hanging it up today, but if I was to leave something behind and I wanted to give it to somebody, what are the traits you believe that makes a good juvenile justice, a good juvenile judge? They should be what?
From our code of ethics, fair, impartial, appropriate temperament. I think from the success that I've had and will continue to have, because I'm not going to give up these things. Being balanced, equitable, being just, being compassionate, being hopeful, and expressing that hope, sharing that hope, and encouraging that hope. Because I think the greatest personal asset that I have, and I think people see it, and they feel it, and they know it, and I'm not afraid to tell anybody where the conversation needs to say, I love you. I love you enough, care about you enough, that I'm going to require that you do this thing, that I'm going to order that you do this thing, that I'm going to correct you on this, that I need you to complete this program. It's not that love covers a multitude of sins, but it does help you to believe that you can change.
I'm going to rewind it here. I'm going to give you my final questions. Question 1 I have for you. If you could trade places with somebody for a day, or who it is, just one day, to do whatever it is that they do or whatever you would like to do if you were them, who would it be?
I know that she's no longer with us. I would trade places with Maya Angelou.
Now what?
Because
You do with that one day as Maya Angelou.
I would write poetry.
Really? You just want to write something really nice.
I want to write something really nice. I want to be inspirational. Yeah, if I had to do that.
That's a different one. What's your guilty pleasure? the judge like? Is it some candy? Is it some cake? Is it a cigar?
No, Larry's
I
a
just had
cigar.
cigars too.
Larry's a cigar smoker.
Yeah, I had some doozy.
Guilty pleasure, I think I'm reflective of my family. Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Ice
What
cream.
kind? What's your flavor?
Chocolate.
That's my favorite flavor too. We got that in common. I like chocolate ice cream. What's the best compliment you ever got? What's the best compliment somebody ever gave?
It came from a grandmother. Her son was willing to take the kids. And I basically said that you've done the thing that you've been asked to do. This is an opportunity. You have your son here and his wife. They'll take care of the kids. Go out and live your life. Go live your life. And she sent me a beautiful card.
Really?
Saying, thank you. I'm okay. I'm going out to live my life. Sometimes it's hard to know when to hold on and when to let go. And I think the greatest compliment that I receive sometimes is when people exhale.
Something you wish you were better at?
I'll keep it simple. I wish I was a better golfer.
A better golfer?
I wish I was a better golfer.
Really? You like playing golf?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
I couldn't play softball. The ball was too big. It would fall into my glove and it would hurt my hand. I'm like, no. Find another sport.
Really? What's the worst piece of advice you ever got?
There's some things that you can just do on your own. Oh, you can just do that. You can do that yourself.
Don't need no help.
Don't need no help. The way that you're going to handle it, that's the right and the only way.
That's interesting. Never cease to make you smile. Whenever you sit back and you have one of days, but you can run across your mind and be like, that's crazy. And they were crazy. That was crazy. Or something that made you laugh every time.
I guess the first thing that came to mind when you sow a seed with a family or a friend or somebody close to you, a relative, somebody that you want to see grow and be more than their circumstance. And then they come back and they just talking to you and you know that your seed has taken root and it's growing. But if you really ask me about what makes me laugh, what makes me smile, if I really just had to go deep, some of my husband's jokes.
Some of your husband's jokes.
Some of my husband's jokes. And I say it this way. Part of our wedding vows over 26 years ago to ourselves, I can't remember all that Larry said to me, but I go like this. I said, I will always be yours as long as you make me smile and laugh.
And so he's
And
been doing
that's what really makes me smile.
He tell you a joke every day. Do he got good jokes or they corny dad jokes?
It isn't so much a joke. Sometimes it's a little tease or something. Life isn't always easy, and at times it can be lonely.
Right.
And they say it can be even lonelier at the top. But in that one little space that we share, he still makes me laugh and smile. And I guess that's the part of life that's worth it.
It's part.
Just the best part.
DJ, what you got in there?
All right. My question is, have you ever had a decision where you thought you may brought the hammer down a little too hard, but you ran into that particular person or seen that situation manifest in a positive way, and you were able to say, I did the right thing?
I'd like to think that I don't hammer too hard. I just do what's appropriate and with the consequence calls for. And I've definitely had some parents just stomp out the room like, you were so hard on my kid. And I'm like, but if I don't do this 6 months to a year now, the next time he or she faces this offense, he'll be looking at more like 3 to 8. Which one you want me to do? Recently, as hard or as difficult, I've had 2 very encouraging moments. A young man who wrote me a letter telling me about his experience at DYS and thanking me for sending him and what he's learned from that and how he's grown. And with that letter came a personal hand-drawn invitation to his graduation at DYS. And I went to DYS for his graduation, and everyone talked about how he was a really good-hearted kid, but he understood why I had to send him there, because there are just some debts to society that you have to pay, and there are some debts that you have to pay in full. And maybe that's some of the harder things.
You know what's good about that is that how you put that, recognizing that you have to do that and taking the responsibility of it, even to the point of saying, okay, part of this fixing who I am is to reach back to the person who I thought I might have been in here the first month or year or so. I don't know how long he was there. Mad as hell that you put me here. But at some point or another, it clicked that this is working betterment of what I want to do. You know what I mean? And I think that's awesome. That's when it's working. And to go the extra yard to, like you say, handwrite me an invitation to even come so that I can show you that what you've done to me has helped me is even more better. So that's good. That's real nice.
That's a consequence that my parents gave me. It's a consequence that I gave my own children.
That's probably a compliment. It's a good compliment. I would put that up there. A really good one. He didn't give you a compliment in saying, hey, you're great, but he did.
And then I think the other thing was I bound over a kid. Eventually his case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And they acknowledged some of the things that I did and was done against this kid. Ultimately, it didn't change his sentencing, but he was released. I was so happy to hear how he got married.
Okay.
And how he's working 3 jobs. And how he needed a new car. And he couldn't get this new car. And he realized, oh, it's my credit score. And he began to work on his credit score. And he finally got that new car. And my point of all it, and he was saying to my bailiff, but I want to reach out to my counsel. I want to talk to her about something. I'm okay. But every once in a while, you just need to talk to somebody. Because when this didn't happen, or my dad didn't do this or that or the other thing, and Greg had to say to him, you just don't know how many people for your journey that you impacted. You made your father look at parenting totally different. You made your brothers look at the choices that can or would be made in their lives totally different. You changed the law in the state of Ohio and how we have to treat transfer kids in this county. And in the end, you found a wife and a home, and you have a family. And I say all of that to say that, and I think I told Louise the same thing. DYS, incarceration, it's a journey. It's not a destination. I was so glad that life brought him love and family and a second chance based on his choices and what he chose to do about his life on his journey.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I'm going to let you go on that note because I think that's a good place for us to close it right there. But like I said, we doing all of our shows. We're going to let you have this camera right here. I want you to look into the camera, and you got some good words you want to say to the people. You can take your time, say it to the people, because we're going to use that. Also, everybody, I want to let you to know that all the links to the judge's information, she is running this year. So we're going to have links in there. If you want to donate to her campaign, how you can do that. If you want to get involved in her campaign, I'll give you a link of how you can do that, or shoot something to me and I can definitely connect you into what's going on with the judge and what she has going. And if you would like to make sure, I want you to make sure that you vote Judge Alison Nelson Floyd on March. The primary this year is in March, and we want you to do that. It's really up to us. Like I said, we only have one African-American person on the bench in our juvenile courts right now, and we need to make sure that we maintain Judge Floyd on the bench. So, Judge, I'm going to let you have this camera. Feel free to say what you like to say to the peoples.
Being a juvenile court judge is not easy, nor is it being a parent, nor is it being a child, nor is it being a grandparent. And sometimes it's not even easy for our staff and those who work with us and hopefully with you to help you to address the concerns that you're having with your children or with your families. Know always that the Juvenile Court of Cuyahoga County is a resource to you. You are our community. And whenever you need us, you should call us. We may be able to help. I thank you always for your support. And I ask for your support again. This work is not done. Thank you again. From Judge Alison Nelson Floyd.
All right, people. We'll see you next week. Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell. Peace.